I'm sitting with Justin Reilly, the CEO of Wavelo. Thanks again for chatting with us. We're here at DTW. So I'll set aside Wavelo for a second because I'm going to ask a little bit about the arc of your history and how you got here, because we were just chatting about how you were probably a little bit earlier on being AI first than many, at least in our industry. Can you talk a little bit about where you came from and how you ended up at 2000 Wavelo?
Yeah, Matt, and we've talked about this a little bit. My career, anyone that says I've got a 5-year or 10-year plan, and no, I had no idea. I was playing college basketball. I hurt my knee. Thought I was going to go play in Europe after that dream ended, and I had to quickly figure out what I was going to do. And I was coming out into a pretty tough economy, at the time, the financial crisis out of school, and was really looking at the intersection of software and infrastructure as an interesting place to be. And so started the first couple companies around digital product, and mobile native at the time was kind of the buzzwords we were using. They became big data, then it became AI and all these things. And so I've been fascinated with how software can help solve these massive infrastructure problems, and started thinking about becoming AI first as a way to talk about that 11, 12 years ago now. And that's evolved, obviously, as the technology has evolved. There was the last AI summer that was very different than what we're seeing now with large language models. And then found my way to one of the largest telecoms in the world. And really with the test of like, okay, this works in a greenfield setting with starting your own company. It works in the Valley. Could we apply it inside of a massive infrastructure company? Could we get some pretty good results? And through that journey, became even more obsessed with the systems of record problem, which exist in telecom and exist in healthcare with EMRs and EHRs, where these systems, were originally asked to do very basic things. In EMR and EHRs, that's digitize filing cabinets. And in telecom, it was just charging for minutes and text. And now today, we've asked them to do so many different things 30 or 40 years later. And that kind of brought me all the way to Wavelo and Tucows to kind of birth OSS BSS company in a modern way, with event-driven, with AI at the forefront, to really go and tackle this core problem that plagues telecom. And I think it's one of those things, we want to do a lot with our time on this earth. And I think it's a thing that we can actually impact all the humans walking around the earth, whether they know it or not, on why telecom's challenging for them, whether it's too expensive or it's too hard to do business with. It exists in the bowels, in the plumbing of telecom. And if we can even affect that by 1%, will relieve, customers from that pain.
Yeah, and thinking now about the Wavelo arc, because you are starting to affect some of that change. Obviously, Tucows is the parent. Talk a little bit about how Wavelo grew up and why it's having kind of a powerful EDA moment right now.
When I was thinking about starting this company, I was originally, when all the companies I've started have been through raising VC money. And then I was thinking about, well, okay, what needs to be true for a software company in telecom? Well, it needs to have a long arc, because sales cycles are really long. So it needs to be well capitalized. And it needs to have, so long-term investors are number one. Number two, it'd be really nice if there was some great putty to play with, if we could find a holdco or a PE group or someone like that had portfolio companies that could be early customers and early clients. And as I met the Tucows team, 30 years, invented wholesale domain registration, built one of the most loved MVNOs in the United States, then built one of the most loved ISPs in the United States, consistently at the top of Consumer Reports and CSAT. And as I met them, I said, hey, I'm really thinking about this problem. They said, well, we have an MVNO and a fiber company. Do you want to test out this thesis internally? And so I joined in late 2019 to lead product across the kind of portfolio companies, with the eye to eventually launch a software business. And we got to test all this out across a bunch of American consumers with existing mobile companies and fiber companies. And that became really nice because, the convergence is a really big story, making sure that you can do this across prepaid and postpaid, across fiber and fixed wireless, different types of infrastructure and CPE. If you have that thesis, then when you go and say, okay, I'm going to take it out into the world to sell it to other things, it's really battle tested. And then we were able to convince Dish, then EchoStar, Boost Mobile to come on as well at a massive scale. And that's been hugely successful. Partnership there, and they battle tested us even more, right? I mean, we're migrating subscribers out of 20, 30-year-old Sprint systems and getting those into a modern way across all the retail footprint, all the partners. And those things, our customers continue to challenge us to get to a place. And like you said, event driven is a natural kind of catalyst for this innovation. It works well in a lot of other industries and underpins Uber and Airbnb. And we thought that it would be the right architecture for the future, especially as telecoms think about the next 30 years and not the last 30 years.
From your Wavelo leadership position and obviously part of the Two Cows leadership, you do spend a lot of time with investors, and the investor sentiment has changed, especially in telecommunications. What are you seeing when you go talk to your customers who now are dealing with a more maybe active, maybe not activist, but active investor as they're looking to see more value coming out of telecom companies, big and small? Are you seeing that the kinds of solutions Wavelo is bringing is changing the way they can talk to their investors in terms of how they're solving some of their challenges?
For sure. And, we're seeing what might be happening in the private credit market. We saw, a bunch of suppressed multiples in the public market, a lot of money shifting to infrastructure money shifting to data centers to support of kind of what's going on with AI, and maybe away from some fundamental infrastructure that was otherwise viewed as very long-term. And, so you're seeing investors look for returns a little bit sooner than maybe they had told operators 3 or 4 years ago. And so what's true about that? They're looking for better EBITDA performance, better efficiency. They want to see the growth numbers, the ARPU trending in the right direction. Churn mitigation becomes even more important. And if you're a fiber company looking at penetration, if you're 20, 30%, maybe it was different when you were only the one fiber provider or two, but now there's 3. So you've got deeper competition. And so it's creating a burning platform for these operators, or maybe they're on a first gen platform and they weren't thinking about replatforming. And now it's like, well, we need to get to the future faster. The other things that are happening around convergence, you're a fiber company, you want to add mobile, you're a mobile company, you want to add fiber, and the platform you're on is purpose built for that one access type. And so, like, how do you grow ARPU and how do you drive down churn? Well, you offer more access types and bring more share of wallet in. And then as you're thinking about streaming or adding any of these products that maybe are adjacent to telecom, we're seeing that as well. I'm also seeing, as the consolidation happens, you're having these, whether it's private equity or holdcos, looking across these portfolio companies and saying, my goodness, everyone's on a different platform. I bought 7 companies. They're all on 7 different CRMs and some, there's got to be a better way. And so we actually have a lot of inbound from private equity saying, hey, can you come in and just give us a solution for all of our portfolio companies, because we think we should be able to get economies of scale there. And it's the first time that I'm seeing them actually do acquisitions with those synergies in mind. Typically, the big infrastructure funds will think about software last, right? Well, or they'll just say, well, we're not going to get these synergies there. We'll get it on construction or, data center or last mile fiber or whatever it is. So we're seeing that. And certainly it's unevenly distributed across the world, depending on where you are in the world, different generations of platforms and so on and so forth. But I do think that software will be a place to get that efficiency and that value as, kind of things tighten a little bit in the coming couple of years.
Yeah. And that just take a minute to talk about, you talked about Wavelo's conceptual evolution, but the portfolio has grown pretty rapidly in the last couple of years to fill in some of those gaps that you're talking about in terms of addressing the software concerns. We're here at DTW. What are you talking about the most when you see customers here and going forward? That's really been kind of a new element of this expanding portfolio of solutions that.
So we naturally, big rule at Wavelo, we don't solve solved problems. And so, you'll see a lot of folks go custom build CRMs or, we don't do that. We think billing, catalog provisioning and orchestration are the core unsolved problems in telecom. And so we focus on those modules. But because of the way that we've built the software on an event-driven base, it's naturally a control plane and a safety layer for folks adding agentic on top. We want to be able to let operators run wild with whatever they want to do from an agentic perspective, but knowing they have the safety that when it hits the system, then we're going to provide the rail so that nothing goes haywire. And in the last AI revolution, when I was inside of a very large telecom in the United States, that was our problem. We couldn't let the chatbots of that era touch the billing system. And that was where all the value was, because, you'd go in as a customer and say, hey, I deserve a discount, or this billing thing's wrong. You would get kind of halfway into the conversation. Then it would have to pick up to a human to get the safety that you need to go to the layer. We're going to run into that same thing if we don't solve kind of the core system of record problem. And so, well, what does that mean? It's event driven, but it's also headless. We've thought about UIs as IP for a long time. We've started this as a headless company because we always knew that at some point we would get to a world of infinite interfaces where operators could build their own interfaces. And you're seeing some of the biggest operators in the world rolling out Anthropic and Claude to all their employees. They're going to start asking questions. Well, I'm just going to build those things myself. Well, when they build it for themselves, you need to give them the infrastructure for safety, for a control plane. And we're seeing that be a lot of the discussion. And that comes out in the word ontology and some of the things that are popping around. And I think in some ways we stumbled upon that naturally by the decisions we made 6 years ago and starting the company. And then that becomes kind of the operational framework to let people really reap the rewards of AI.
So again, here in Copenhagen, having some interesting conversation with customers and partners alike, what's the 1-2 things you're going to take away from that you maybe change your thought about how you're approaching AI or how you're working with customers, or anything you heard this week that's going to make you think a little deeper about what's next for kind of agentic driven software in telcos?
Yeah, I think, we came in here knowing that folks were having trouble moving from kind of proof of concept to bringing AI into their environments. I think I came in thinking it was a little bit better than it actually is. And so I think I'm leaving feeling a deeper sense of responsibility to help here. And I think one of the ways we can do that is putting out more content and providing more of a, consultative approach in the industry of saying, here's how we've done it internally. We've dog fooded all these things. Here's 5 or 6 examples. Those don't have to necessarily be things you buy, but there's just things that people can kind of learn from. We've obviously partnered with TM Forum and a whole host of industry bodies to help bring event driven into the frameworks. And so I think we need to do a little bit more of that to help out. And that'll be a big takeaway for me to move.
Well, the industry could use the advice, I think, and both from the entrepreneurial side of your arc, and also, of course, the real technical advances that Wavelo brings to software and telecom. Justin, thank you very much, and safe travels, and appreciate the conversation.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.